along with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well done. Okay, a few crass commercial message here. We met an awful lot of people at the World War II Days over in Reading last month, which is a great event, and I would encourage those of you who didn't get there this year to consider going next year, because there's an awful lot of interesting people, interesting displays, lovely airplanes and things, especially the people. And they have a nice magazine that they have out with it. Is anybody here tonight as a result of meeting us there? There you go. Thank you. Any other first-timers, newcomers? Good.
Three people here. One of them almost down in Atlanta, Georgia. Friends of ours.
Okay, well, just so you know, we're the first Thursday of every month, so planning. Thank you for coming. And as usual, I'm sure we have some World War II veterans in the house. They're always worth acknowledging with their show of hands. Look at them all. Now, let's see, first-timers know that we're serious about this, and we thank them very much for being here as well. And for those of you who don't know it, didn't know it, or need to know it, we have these forms to increase our database. If you're not getting the email or the postcards, please sign up. We'd prefer, just from the cost standpoint, if you can get it by email, let us know your email address. As you know, or maybe you don't know, you can eat here at the church beforehand. You gotta call the church, please, and make a reservation so that the cook knows how many people will be here so they don't run out of food, which has happened in the past. As I say, World War II. Oh, I noticed we have some suppliers on the back table there, outside, and some books for sale if you care to partake of those later on. Next meeting is Thursday, August 1st. We're back to our Thursday rotation. Thank you for your indulgence on Tuesdays for the last couple of months. And next month, bring a guest. And on your way out tonight, don't forget, we have the helmet committee. We do not charge for anything, but we will collect contributions. And thank you very much in advance. Richard Burton has an announcement he'd like to make. His efforts with the Vietnam Roundtable, which is gaining great success. Anybody interested, please listen.
Coming up on Thursday, 2 days from today, the Vietnam veterans and the Marine Corps League from Hummelstown and the Marine Corps Riders are going to serve lunch down at the Lebanon VA. And the lunch is at 12 o'clock noon, and we need some help. If you have a couple hours to give down at the Lebanon VA, it's building 18. As you face the front of the VA, it's to the left and about halfway around the back. So we're going to have picnic food, fruit, cake and ice cream for the veterans, and the Vietnam veterans are going to give $500 donation for books for the canteen. So if you have a couple hours to spare coming up 2 days from now on July the 4th, that would be very appreciated by the veterans down there. Also, a shameless promotion for the Vietnam Roundtable, which is Thursday a week on the 11th. We have somebody coming up from York that did brown water, the patrol boats, river, the PBRs. He's going to speak in July. And then in August, we have a South Vietnamese helicopter pilot from Lancaster, who eventually became a United States citizen. So that's the Vietnam Roundtable. Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, Rich. And finally, next month's speaker, I hope you're still lined up. Steve Gallagher's in here.
He's in Italy.
Hmm?
He's in Italy.
He's in Italy. Okay, speaking of Lucille Galarizzo, it seems that on our roster will be Roger St. Germain, who was a P-51 pilot. Late at the tail end of the war, later in the war. He also flew a variety of other military aircraft. So that ought to be interesting. And if anybody here knows a World War II vet, or is a World War II vet who would like to volunteer to be a speaker, we'd love to hear from you. We're always looking for more people to talk about World War II and what's going on. So in the past few months, we've had people from all over the place. We've had Dutch people, we've had somebody from the Philippines, we've had some Germans, we've had, what else we've had? Polish, excuse me, of course, Polish people. And I think, to my knowledge, this will be our first Austrian speaker this evening. And as you know, there's a young corporal from Austria who caused quite a dust up in Europe for a few years. And I guess if you followed the Dick Winters story one night, you'll know that all that kind of ended in Austria as well. So it brings a great circle around Europe. And so we're delighted to have our speaker this evening, Herta Sakimora, who was a child and grew up in Austria, and she will discuss her memories of living there during World War II. After which we'll have some question and answers, and let's go. Herta, it's yours. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words of introduction, and thank you all for allowing me to tell you about my experiences during and after World War II. I was born in June of 1939 in Linz, a city on the Danube, the capital of the western province of Austria. However, in 1938, a year before, Hitler already annexed Austria and made it part of the German Reich. Then in September, a few months later, of 1939, he invaded Poland, and that started World War II. My first memories are of bombing raids in Linz, because there were some huge steel mills and chemical factories on the outskirts of the city. Of course, they were targeted. I remember having to get up at night and try to get dressed, and my mother taking me and my two other sisters down into the bomb shelter. It was very frightening. We heard the sirens and the anti-aircraft fire. And because of those bombing raids, my father decided to move us to the country where it was safer. That was somewhat west of Linz, outside of a small town, and he rented a house there. And at first things, it was very nice for us. We children enjoyed the countryside. And eventually my father was sent to France. He stayed in contact with my mother, but he was injured there, and was very serious injuries. He recovered in Germany at several different hospitals. It was more than half a year, and he never really recovered. This was just the first injury, but he had a lot of shrapnel throughout his body. He needed numerous skin grafts over the years. And not only did he never recover physically, but like many other Austrians and Germans, the emotional damage that was done because they felt betrayed by Hitler, of course. And the other thing was my father then was never able to support his family, and to a husband and father, that is very painful. When the Russian front collapsed, and my father was by then missing, my mother had to move into a former German garrison We couldn't afford the house anymore. And there were a lot of what was then called, or later called, the East Bloc countries. A lot of refugees from there who were fleeing the Red Army. The Russians were advancing, and these refugees were mostly of ethnic German background. And naturally, they were afraid of retaliation. They all wanted to get as far west as possible. Then, when that German garrison was closed down, we were put by the mayor of the little town into a small room, one of the guest rooms in the restaurant. My mother became ill. We had to be put in an orphanage that was run by Catholic nuns, and they weren't equipped for so many children, because many of the children from the refugees, children who were too ill, had become separated from their parents and so forth. They took them all in, and we stayed there for several months. Then we started school, my older sister and I, and things became pretty bad as far as getting food, getting clothes. We outgrew our things. And my mother took us in the summer out into the forest. We picked berries and ate until our tummies hurt, and brought home a lot. And eventually she forced us, more or less, to go out and beg to the different farms. We used to say, could we have a slice of bread? And in those farms, they baked these huge round loaves of bread, so one slice would have been quite substantial. And some of the farmers were kind enough to take us in and feed us and gave us things to take home. Others didn't bother even coming to the door. Others sent the dogs on us. So it was quite frightening. I remember a couple times my mother took us out at night to dig up some potatoes in the field. Of course, that was stealing, and we knew it, and we were just so scared. And then we heard that my father had become a prisoner of war. American took him as prisoner of war. We didn't know where he was. My mother was quite concerned. And I and my younger sister decided to look for him. By then, there was a U.S. Army base close to that town. And we decided we were going to look for him there. And we snuck around outside the fence, and of course eventually were discovered by the American soldiers, and they took us into the camp and before an American officer, and we were just deathly afraid. And well, we couldn't communicate, obviously. They didn't speak German and we didn't speak English, and they gave us some candy and sent us on our way. Later on, my father was turned over to the Russians, but in Austria. After the war, Austria was divided into 4 sectors, as they were called. France, Britain, Russia, and the United States. And this place where my father was held prisoner was across from the city of Linz, across the Danube. Because of his injuries, they delayed sending him to Siberia, and eventually did not at all, because they realized he would not survive the trip. My mother made trips to the commandant, the Russian commandant, and took me along to maybe move him a little bit to see there were children at home. my mother begged to at least have him get some medical treatment, which was denied him, or release him, and eventually it happened. My father underwent a lot of surgeries. Again, he never did recover. And then my father was able to bring us to Linz, back to Linz from the country. He tried to find some work, was not successful, and because he was originally from Vienna, he moved us to Vienna. A friend of his had apartment buildings, and there was an apartment really not very, how shall I say, not fit to be occupied. There was house-to-house fighting in Vienna in that sector with the Russians. There were still bullet holes in the doors and window panes missing. And because part of the apartment building also had been bombed, there was damage to an artist's studio above our apartment. And with all that glass front, that was damaged, and rain and snow did even more damage, and it came down into our apartment. And again, my father tried to find work, but it was impossible. Eventually, he did get a very small disability pension from the government. And we children tried to go to school. At that time, it was only 8 years of public schooling. That's changed now. At 15, when I graduated, there were many other young people looking for work because Hitler had encouraged the birth of many children to create that Aryan race. And so it was tough to find work, but the government had some business courses made available. And I was accepted, and for about a year and a half, I was going to school, and then became an office clerk. Helped my parents support my younger sisters. And eventually, when I had found a job, I decided to attend, instead of going on vacation, a 3-week international work camp. That was sponsored by the Mennonites from the United States, part of their relief work in Europe. And of course my boss wasn't pleased because he thought I should relax on vacation and not do hard labor. It was construction work. One was renovation work on a children's hospital in Austria. The other one was constructing or building a street that led into a housing development for these refugees who had come from the East. I was there in 56 and 57, and this is where I met my husband. He was born in California, and he spent 2 years with the Mennonite Central Committee doing relief work in Austria. And part of it was making sure that these work camps were operating smoothly. After he left in 1957, he returned to the States, was again in California for a couple years, and then came to Granton, Messiah College, where his parents were residing. And we corresponded, he and I corresponded for about 8 years. And then he came with his mother to Vienna. We got married there. And after I came to the States, became a citizen, U.S. citizen in 1968. So that is my story. I do have something I want to point out about the city of Linz. Hitler had some grandiose dreams about retiring there, even though he had spent that many years, barely 9 years in Linz. He was born in Upper Austria, but further west. And he wanted to elevate Linz to a cultural metropolis. Of course, Vienna is the cultural metropolis, but I think it was just a revenge thing because the fine Academy of Arts rejected him. His work of paintings was not good enough. The only realization as far as making Linz into a cultural center were 2 large buildings at the bridgehead and 2 large statues of some ancient German rulers. Richard Wagner had immortalized those in his operas, and Hitler was very fond of Wagner because everything, Germanic, that was his thing. And there is here an article in the paper. It's in German, unfortunately, but that shows actually the 2 buildings and the 2 statues. And if you have any questions, I welcome them. If you want to come forward and look at some of the things, I'll be happy to explain. And there's one thing here I want to mention. I'm a member of the St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Mechanicsburg, and some of the members of our congregation are soldiers who have been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I made it my mission to support them through packages, have the children of Sunday school classes make cards and so forth to send over to them. And then a gentleman of our congregation started a program or project rather called Operation Helmet Caps. And we sent altogether about 500 of these helmet caps to Afghanistan. They are of a particular wool yarn. It can't be anything synthetic in case there is injury, burn injuries that would even make synthetic yarn melt into the wounds and so forth. They are made of a particular pattern so that they fit any head, no matter what size. Also, the yarn comes from a farm, from lands of a farm in Virginia. So this is, homegrown yarn, not something from China. And I have a picture here of when my son was over there, and they're all wearing them. He told me that they slept on those things, and of course they cushioned their helmets and so forth. So we thought that was a very neat project. And, like I said, there are pictures here and other things that you're welcome to look at. In ending, I would like to say I thank all veterans and soldiers for their sacrifices. And I wish you all a happy 4th of July.
Thank you, Herta. It's nice that you bring the past to the present through your son, whose picture here, and I might point out proudly that he is a proud airborne soldier.
Yeah, maybe I should mention, I have 2 sons. Michael, our firstborn, was in the Navy through an ROTC scholarship program at Villanova University. He was lieutenant commander, but he's not in the Navy now. My second one, Gregory, went to college for 4 years, and then he decided he wanted to try the Army. And he is a major now. He was 1 year in South Korea, made Soldier of the Year. Of course, this is the mother now bragging. And he was in Kosovo. He was a liaison between the U.S. Army and the local authorities there. He was twice in Iraq and just returned at the end of this past January from Afghanistan. In Iraq, he was with the 82nd Airborne, and in Afghanistan, he was commanding officer with the 117th Infantry. I have 5 grandchildren, 2 and 3. You can see their pictures. I'm very proud of them.
And I'm sure they're proud of you and your family's history. There's a lot of stuff up here that's worth looking at. Very interesting, and I know that Herta will be happy to tell you about it. But a little bit of it in German. If anybody in German like to translate besides Herta? But anyway, thank you so much. It's very nice of you to be here. Any questions? Any other questions? Good.
For what purpose was your father taken from your family by the Germans? Was it to join the army or to be part of a manufacturing facility?
My father had a business degree. How much that helped him, really, he never did tell us much. And after the war, he didn't talk about it at all. But once Austria was not its own country, Hitler had made it part, like I said, of the German Reich. That was it. No free will of the people, you know. So people were just drafted, men were drafted. Anyone who resisted might have disappeared. There were spies everywhere. You didn't know if you said something, God forbid, that could have, somebody come at night and take you away. My mother told us kids many years later that when Hitler spoke on the radio, of course, you had to listen to all his speeches. And she said, for some strange reason, it always put her to sleep. And she said that was very dangerous because somebody could have reported that.
In school, were you taught the Hitler doctrine?
Oh, there was not a word about World War II in our history books after the war. Nothing. We had to just find it somehow ourselves, read history books and so forth.
So that the Hitler Youth movement wasn't prevalent in your area?
Well,
you were too young.
I was too young, but I know that it was.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, your husband was from California. With his name, was he of a Japanese?
He was, yes. My husband was born in Southern California. So was his mother. His father came over from Japan as a young man. They had a flower shop and some grounds where they raised flowers. And then, of course, after Pearl Harbor, they were one of the people who had to pack up within 1 week, and they were sent to the
that's what I was wondering.
camps.
Thank you very much.
Question over here?
I'm good, Kurt.
That's okay. That's how I get my PT.
So what do you remember at the end of the war, at the surrender? What was life like then? What was your recollection of that event?
Well, in that little town, they were somewhat isolated. Things didn't get nearly as bad, obviously, as they did in the big cities. So there wasn't that much, how shall I say, of upheaval, etc. And we lived that town, and Linz also were American sector. But in the Russian sectors, things were much stricter. That, for example, when you crossed the Danube from Linz to the other side, to the northern part of Upper Austria, you were in the Russian sector. There was a Russian checkpoint, everybody got after the war a special ID card. It was in all three languages: English, French, Russian. And wherever you went, if you crossed, let's say even by train into another sector, the soldiers came in and checked everybody up. Now, when we were really starving, my mother had family in the northern part where the Russians were occupying. And she was hoping to get for 4 children some food. I think she got eggs and butter and flour eventually. But how to get that across without the Russians confiscating it? So my youngest sister was still a baby, and my mother put her in the baby carriage, and those old baby carriages were very deep. So she put in a little mattress and a blanket and a sheet and a pillow and so forth, and toward the bottom she put the food, and toward the top she put the soiled diapers. So when we came back, naturally they thought, oh, she's smuggling something across here. But when they hit the soiled diapers, they quickly let us go. My mother also, shortly after the Americans came, was offered to have my younger sister adopted by an American officer and his wife. They had no children, and they saw how thin we were, and but my mother couldn't do it. Then in 1949, still that many years already after the war, out of us 4, I was the most malnourished. And the Lutheran relief work in Europe sent children to families in other countries to feed them for a while. I was sent with 500 children altogether to Holland and was taken in by a family for 3.5 months. And they were very, very kind to me, and I came back with rosy cheeks. And, it was nice.
Are you still in touch with that family?
No, they stopped the correspondence, unfortunately.
How long did the Russian zone and the French zone, how long did that last in Austria?
Well, 1955, finally Austria could sign the peace treaty with the 4 occupying forces. And it could have happened many years earlier, but the Russians were dragging their feet. Austria, geographically, they didn't trust that situation because it was what was called the Iron Curtain, right there. The border to Hungary, and then there's, of course, they took Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, etc., Czechia, and so forth. Also, one of the conditions then was that for 20 years they would be allowed to take up all the oil that was found east of Vienna. So they made sure that was one of the things, one of their conditions. But in Vienna we lived in the Russian sector, and then within about 10 minutes walking distance, this was in the city, right in the middle of the city. Later on, the Americans had a cultural center, and there was a library and movies, and because in school we had to, let's say in 5th grade, we got about 1 lesson of English that was mandatory per week. So we learned some English, and my younger sister and I, we enjoyed going to the cultural center, improve our English a little bit, took out books, saw movies, and learned more about the United States.
Propaganda.
Well, the Russians had their own cultural center, but it was too obvious for us, even for us kids.
All right. Anybody else? Oh, sorry.
Did you live in this area all your life then, or not?
You mean here in the States? Here? Yeah. My husband lived in Harrisburg, and after we got married, we came straight to Harrisburg. Yeah. I live now in Mechanicsburg, have lived for many years, but consider that whole area, East and West Shore, as our home.
Did your parents ever get to this country?
My mother did. My mother came several times, and she used to stay for months on end and loved it. Yeah, very much. My sister also came. Yes.
Hi, can you describe when the Russian army first came through? Do you remember any of that?
Well, not when they came through. They tried to shield us children from that. And we were at the time still out in the country, but in the cities, things were very bad. There was looting and raping and all that goes with war.
Hey, well, oh, good.
I just had a comment for you. Your mother sounds like she was a very brave and strong woman.
She was.
To get you all through that safely.
Yes, she was a little woman, frail. She looked very frail, but she did what she could. She did suffer a lot. Yeah. She told us afterwards, even long after the war, there were times, she said, I contemplated turning up the gas stove and killing us all.
So once more we hear the story of people who lived through it, struggled through it, survived it, and one way or the other ended up in America, and I think America is the better off for it. So thank you so much for coming to visit with us.
I'm very proud.
On a local note, before we all visit the Helmet Committee, I've been told that the famous Harrisburg riverboat cruises on the Pride of the Susquehanna is free for all veterans. So.
Been there, let me see. Were they the beginning to come in?
That's all he was able to build, these two buildings for the same. And this is the bridge for them across. And these are the statues. You see the statues, of those.
One of the things I didn't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. One of the things I did not know, but I know now.
These are the various hospitals that he.
I wanted to do his cap. I met.
You see how that. Oh yes, but apparently,
That Fort Bragg?
that was Fort Bragg, yes. You're right. So let's see what that is. Airborne.
Ich bin ein Fallschirmspringer.
Fallschirmspringer, yes. My son's knees are shot now, but she enjoyed it last night.
Are they still medically in Sunday?
Well, right now, we don't have a demand for it. But we still have yarn. Anytime if somebody, will purchase. Of course, we hope that our soldiers come out. Afghanistan will be the same.
That's great. That's my favorite.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wait. Oh, my God.
I thought I recognized the name writing it in something.